Hello. Welcome. Today's podcast is the fear of uncertainty. And to really anchor us in what we are talking about today, I actually want to start with a little mental exercise.
Oh, I love a good visualization to kick things off.
Right. So if you are somewhere safe, meaning, you aren't driving a car or operating heavy machinery right now, I want you to just close your eyes.
And really try to picture this as vividly as you possibly can.
Yeah, try to put yourself there. Imagine you are standing right in the middle of a dirt crossroads. You look down, you see the dust on your shoes. You feel a slight breeze on your face. Stretching out in front of you are two distinct paths.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now look to the path on your left. It is entirely familiar. It's bathed in bright, clear sunlight. You can see every single stone on the ground. You can see the way the tree roots kind of twist over the dirt. You can see a slight bend about 100 yards down.
You know absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, where that path leads.
Spot on. You've walked it 1,000,000 times. But then you turn your head to the path on your right.
And that one is different.
Very different. That one disappears completely into this thick, heavy, impenetrable gray fog. You cannot see 5 feet ahead of you. The light just sort of dies inside of it.
That is such a striking image.
And the thing is, you have no idea if the ground under that fog is stable and safe, or if it, suddenly drops off into a jagged ravine. You don't know if there are gorgeous sweeping valleys waiting for you in there, or treacherous mountains or hidden predators.
It's an incredibly powerful image. And the fascinating thing is that your body is probably reacting to it even just as you describe it.
I honestly felt it just painting the picture.
Yeah.
Just visualizing that right-hand path triggers a very real, very physical reaction.
Absolutely. Your heart might start beating just a little bit faster.
Yeah, maybe your breathing gets a little shallower. Your palms might get a tiny bit sweaty.
And then comes that whispering, insidious voice in the back of your head.
Right. That voice going, what if something goes wrong? What if you take a step into the mist and you fail? What if you wander into that fog and you just never find your way back out?
And that tight, uncomfortable, sometimes completely paralyzing feeling you're describing, that is the pure essence of the fear of uncertainty.
It's intense.
It is. And it's not a personality quirk. I really want to emphasize that. It is an incredibly primal biological response.
And it's universally human, right? Every single person on this planet, regardless of their background, their culture, or even their natural bravery, has felt that exact sensation.
Without a doubt, it takes so many forms.
Like as the university student sitting at their desk, staring at a blank screen, agonizing over when those final exam results are going to drop.
Or the loyal employee lying awake at 3 a.m., just staring at the ceiling, wondering if the company layoffs they heard rumors about are going to hit their specific department on Monday.
Oh, that's a brutal one. Or it's the parent, watching their kid walk through the school gates on the very first day, just hoping they'll make friends and be okay.
Or the traveler stepping off an airplane into a bustling, chaotic city where they don't speak a single word of the local language.
Yes. Or, perhaps most profoundly, the person sitting quietly in a sterile, cold doctor's waiting room, having absolutely no idea what the diagnosis is going to be when that door finally opens.
That last one really highlights the core of the issue, I think. What is crucial for everyone to understand right out of the gate is that uncertainty is not something that only happens to unlucky people.
Right.
Experiencing it does not mean you are a weak person, and it is certainly not a flaw in your character. It is simply one of the most foundational human experiences that exist.
But despite how common it is, it feels like very few of us actually understand the mechanics of it.
We rarely talk about it openly.
Yeah. And we almost never learn how to manage it in a way that is actually healthy. We just kind of white knuckle our way through the fog.
Which is why we are taking this deep dive today. We need to unpack this.
Exactly. I mean, absolutely. We are going to take a really thorough, honest, and completely judgment-free journey into this fear. We want to understand the machinery behind it.
Yes. Looking at why the human brain is literally wired to hate the unknown.
And we'll look at how this fear secretly pulls the strings in our lives, dictating our career choices, sabotaging our relationships, and even building invisible walls when we try to learn a new language.
But ultimately, we aren't just going to leave you in the fog.
No, definitely not. We are going to build an evidence-based toolkit to help you finally make peace with the unknown.
And I think the best place to start is by defining our terms, because before we can rewire our reaction to something, we have to know what it actually is.
Okay, so how do we define it?
In the simplest terms, uncertainty is just the state of not knowing what will happen next. It is the pure absence of certainty.
All right.
If you visualize your life as a timeline, uncertainty is simply the gap, the blank, unwritten space between where you are standing right now in this present moment and what the future holds.
A blank space. I want to unpack this gap idea with an analogy, actually, because I'm trying to wrap my head around why a simple blank space feels so inherently terrifying to us.
Go for it.
To me, it feels a lot like walking into a pitch black room.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. If it's your own bedroom, the dark is completely fine. You know where your bed is. You know where the dresser is.
Mm-hmm.
You know you aren't going to stub your toe on the nightstand. You have a mental map.
We have predictability.
Yes. But if you walk into a brand new hotel room and the lights are off, it is terrifying. You're shuffling your feet. Your hands are out in front of you. You're tensed up.
You're anticipating an impact.
But logically, I have to push back on my own brain here. Why does a simple lack of information feel identical to a physical threat?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing bad is actually happening to me in that dark hotel room. I am perfectly safe. So why the panic?
That is the perfect question to anchor this entire discussion. And the answer requires us to look at the brain's fundamental job description.
Okay, what is its job?
Think about all those examples we gave earlier. The student waiting for the exam results, the employee worrying about layoffs, the patient waiting on the doctor. Notice that in none of those situations is anything bad actually happening in the present moment.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the student isn't failing right now.
The employee still has a job right now. The suffering does not come from a present tangible danger. The suffering comes entirely from the void of information.
The dark hotel room.
Yes. And the reason that void is so acutely painful is because your brain is, at its absolute core, a prediction machine.
A prediction machine.
Okay.
I need you to explain that a bit more because I usually think of my brain as like a thinking machine or a memory machine.
Sure. Thinking and memory are really just tools the brain uses to serve its primary function, which is predicting the immediate future so it can keep you alive.
Keep me alive, right?
Every single second of every single day, your brain is making thousands of tiny microscopic predictions, calculating probabilities constantly.
Like what kind of predictions?
Well, when you reach your hand out to pick up a glass of water, your brain has instantly predicted how heavy that glass will be based on past experience. So it knows exactly how much muscle force to recruit in your arm.
Oh, that makes sense.
When you walk down a flight of stairs, your brain is predicting the precise distance to the next step so you maintain your balance.
Or when you're chatting with a friend, your brain is already predicting the end of their sentence so you can formulate your response in real time.
Spot on. It's constant.
Oh, wow. And when that prediction is wrong, it is a huge shock to the system. I'm thinking about that awful feeling when you're walking down the stairs and you think there's one more step at the bottom, but there actually isn't.
Oh, everyone knows that feeling.
Your foot just hits the flat floor way too early. That sudden dropping feeling in your stomach is horrible. It's like a jolt of electricity.
That jolt is a biological alarm bell. Or similarly, when you pick up an opaque milk carton thinking it's completely full, but it's actually empty, and you end up throwing it into the air because you used way too much force.
I have done that so many times.
Right. That is a prediction error. Now, this prediction system is incredibly useful. It keeps us safe and helps us navigate the physical world efficiently without having to consciously think about every single movement.
But I'm guessing there's a catch.
There is a major biological glitch we all suffer from. When the brain cannot make a prediction, when it faces that heavy gray fog you described, it doesn't just calmly say, oh, well, I guess we'll wait and see.
No, it definitely doesn't do that.
No, it triggers a massive internal alarm. It goes into full-blown panic mode. It interprets the unknown as a potential imminent threat.
Because if it doesn't know what's there, it has to assume the worst, right?
Indeed. It assumes that because it can't figure out what is going to happen, it absolutely must prepare for the worst case scenario. This is an evolutionary mismatch.
An evolutionary mismatch.
Yeah, we have to rewind the clock and think about our ancestors thousands of years ago on the savannah. They lived in a world full of real, immediate physical danger.
Real predators.
Right. If an early human heard a sudden rustling sound in the bushes, that lack of information, that uncertainty could very well mean a predator was stalking them.
Or a rival tribe.
Absolutely. An unfamiliar, foggy landscape could hide a deadly cliff or a rival tribe with weapons. In that ancient world, being highly cautious and downright terrified of the unknown was a massive survival advantage.
So the people who are laid back and said, oh, it's probably just the wind in those bushes, they got eaten.
They got eaten, and they didn't pass on their genes. The early humans who panicked at the rustling dish, who assumed it was a tiger, who flooded their bodies with adrenaline and ran away, those were the ones who survived.
I see where this is going. We are the direct descendants of the anxious, paranoid humans who always assume the worst.
We absolutely are. But fast forward to today. Most of us are not facing life-threatening predators on our morning commute.
Usually not.
We are not foraging for berries in hostile territory. Yet our physical brains have not had time to evolve past that. We are still running that ancient Savannah-era survival software.
So when you get a vague, uncertain email from your boss on a Friday afternoon that just says, come see me in my office at 3 p.m., your nervous system responds as if you are facing a literal physical lion.
You get the exact same fight or flight response. Your body gets ready to either sprint for your life or fight to the death over a calendar invite.
That is wild to think about. But honestly, I have to challenge this design a little bit.
Please do.
If human beings are supposedly the most highly evolved creatures on the planet, if our brains can build skyscrapers and write symphonies, why hasn't this software been updated?
It's a fair point.
I mean, why does the brain automatically assume the mysterious fog equals a deadly cliff? Why doesn't the brain ever pause and say, hey, maybe there's a beautiful, sunny, relaxing beach hidden in that fog?
That brings us to a really powerful psychological mechanism called the negativity bias. And it's deeply tied to our desperate need for control.
Our need for control.
Human beings have a fundamental, almost desperate need to feel like they are in the driver's seat of their own lives. When things are predictable, we feel capable, we feel smart, we feel safe.
And uncertainty strips that feeling away.
Completely away. It reminds us of a very uncomfortable truth. That we are actually tiny, vulnerable beings in a massive, chaotic, unpredictable universe.
Wow, okay, existential dread right there.
Right. That realization is deeply unsettling to the ego. It challenges our core identity as the masters of our domain. So to protect us from being blindsided by that chaos, the brain defaults to the negativity bias.
So the brain essentially says, I am going to imagine the absolute most terrible thing possible so that if it happens, I am not caught off guard.
That's the underlying logic. Psychologists and neuroscientists note that our brains give vastly more weight to negative possibilities than positive ones. It's a matter of biological accounting.
Biological accounting.
Yeah. When you don't know what will happen, your mind doesn't offer up a sunny beach because a sunny beach won't kill you if you aren't prepared for it.
Ah, right. But a cliff will.
A cliff will. A predator will. So the brain focuses exclusively on the cliff. It's not that you're just a natural pessimist or a negative person. It's your brain working overtime, burning vast amounts of energy to protect you from harm.
Unfortunately, in the modern world, this quote-unquote protection usually causes infinitely more suffering and stress than the actual situation itself.
100%.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We aren't just talking about evolutionary theory or, philosophical ideas here.
No, not at all.
There is hard clinical data proving just how deeply, on a biological level, we despise the unknown. When we were pulling the research for this deep dive, there was one fascinating study that completely flipped how I think about human preference and pain.
Yes, the electric shock study. This is an absolute landmark piece of research in the field of human anxiety and stress, published in Nature Communications, I believe.
Okay, so listener, picture this. The researchers took a group of volunteers and divided them up into different groups. Mm-hmm. For the first group, the researchers told them, you are 100% going to receive a painful electric shock. There was complete certainty. They knew the pain was coming.
No ambiguity whatsoever.
For the second group, the researchers told them, there is a 50% chance you will receive a shock. It's a coin flip. You might get zapped, or you might walk away completely fine.
Okay, so a 50-50 chance.
Now, logic would tell you that the people who might escape the pain would be less stressed, right? But what the researchers found was that the people with the 50% chance, the ones sitting in the fog of uncertainty, experienced significantly more stress than the people who knew for an absolute fact they were going to get shocked.
It is a profound finding. The researchers weren't just asking them how they felt either. They were monitoring their physiological stress levels.
Like their heart rates and stuff.
Yes, their heart rates, their pupil dilation, their sweat gland activity. And the biological markers of stress were completely off the charts for the 50% group.
That is just crazy to me.
Not knowing what was going to happen was demonstrably physically more agonizing than knowing something bad was definitely going to happen.
I just want to pause on that because it's so counterintuitive. We would literally rather sit down in a chair and say, yes, please shock me right now, get it over with, than sit in the suspense of a coin flip.
Yes, because the suspense is intolerable to the nervous system.
That implies the suspense itself, the mental agony of waiting, is physically more painful than actual literal electricity.
That is the incredible, staggering power of our aversion to uncertainty. And we can actually see this happening in real time inside the brain.
Through brain scans.
Exactly. When scientists do functional MRI brain imaging studies during these types of experiments, they look very closely at a tiny almond-shaped structure called the amygdala.
Right, the amygdala. That's the fear center.
Yes, the brain's primary fear and threat detection center. The scans consistently show that the amygdala lights up much, much more strongly for vague, undefined threats than it does for clear, concrete problems.
Wow. So I have a clear problem. Let's say I have a broken arm or I get a flat tire on the highway. My brain says, okay, this is bad. This is a massive inconvenience, but I know what it is. Let's make a plan. Let's fix it.
Yes. It shifts into problem-solving mode.
But if I have a vague problem like, my partner seems really quiet and annoyed with me today, but I don't know why, the amygdala just goes supernova.
That's a brilliant way to put it, because a vague, undefined worry feels completely boundless. The brain has no edges or boundaries for it.
So the fear just spreads everywhere.
Right. With a flat tire, the problem is contained strictly to the tire. With a vague, quiet partner, the problem could be anything. It could be about money. It could be about a past argument. It could be that they are falling out of love.
Because the brain can't put the problem in a neat little box. The fear bleeds into absolutely everything. It consumes all your cognitive bandwidth.
Spot on. It takes over.
So now that we understand this biological machinery, the prediction errors, the amygdala going into overdrive, we need to look at how this glitch doesn't just stay neatly contained in a laboratory setting.
Oh no, it affects every part of our lives.
It bleeds out into our daily lives. It wears many different masks. It masquerades as being practical or cautious, secretly sabotaging us and tricking us into making really poor, limiting decisions across basically every area of our lives.
And once you see these behavioral patterns, you really start recognizing them everywhere.
Let's explore how this plays out in the real world, starting with career and work.
Okay, let's talk about careers.
We can look at a scenario that plays out in office buildings and corporate environments all over the world every single day. Let's consider a woman named Priya.
Okay, Priya.
Priya has worked at the exact same company for 8 years. She is incredibly comfortable. She knows her colleagues' coffee orders by heart. She knows the rhythm of her daily tasks. She knows all the office politics, and her paycheck clears reliably every 2 weeks.
Sounds nice and stable. It is stable, but deep down in her soul, she is profoundly unfulfilled. She feels unchallenged, bored, and stagnant.
She wants more.
Yes. She has this beautiful, vivid dream of starting her own small bakery. She loves baking. She's great at it. But every single time she even entertains the thought of quitting to start this business, the heavy fog of uncertainty rolls in.
And I can hear the whispers of her amygdala right now.
What if I fail? What if I drain my entire life savings? What if nobody buys my pastries?
What if the economy crashes?
Right. What if I look back in 5 years broke and deeply regret leaving my nice, stable, boring desk job?
And because those what ifs activate her fear center so fiercely, the biological cost of leaving feels too high. So Priya stays right where she is, year after year.
She remains safe.
She remains safe, she remains secure, but she also remains totally unsatisfied and creatively starved.
The tragedy there is that people around her might judge her and say she lacks ambition or she's lazy, but that's not it at all, is it? It's not a lack of drive, it's a biological barricade. It is. Priya is a victim of what behavioral economists and psychologists call the status quo bias.
The status quo bias.
This is our deep-seated, often irrational tendency to prefer things to stay exactly as they are, simply because any change, even a potentially positive change, introduces uncertainty. Priya's brain is actively tricking her. It is telling her that staying in the dull job is the safe choice.
But staying miserable isn't safe. It's a guaranteed negative outcome.
You're touching on the hidden cost. Staying in a situation that slowly drains your joy is a massive, profound risk. It is the risk of wasting your potential, wasting your limited time on Earth, and sacrificing your happiness.
Wow, yeah.
But here is the catch. Because the misery of her current job is familiar, she knows exactly what kind of boredom and frustration to expect every single Tuesday morning. It doesn't trigger the uncertainty alarm.
The brain prefers familiar misery over unfamiliar possibility.
The known pain of the unsatisfying present feels biologically safer than the foggy unknown future.
That is heartbreaking. Familiar misery over unfamiliar possibility. But it doesn't just happen with our spreadsheets and business plans. It infects something much more delicate.
Relationships.
Yes. Let's look at our relationships and human connection. Because this is where the fear of the unknown gets deeply, sometimes painfully personal. Let's talk about a guy named Carlos.
All right, tell me about Carlos.
Carlos has been dating a wonderful new partner for about 3 months. Things are going genuinely great. They laugh, they share values, they connect on a deep level. But Carlos is carrying some heavy baggage.
Most of us are.
Right. His last relationship ended in a brutal, painful, out-of-the-blue betrayal. And now, even though his current partner is kind and loving and has given him no reason to doubt her, Carlos just cannot relax.
Because he's staring into the fog of human vulnerability.
Yes. He's constantly thinking, what if she leaves me out of nowhere, just like my ex did? What if she's secretly hiding things from me? What if I let my guard down, open up all these old, unhealed wounds, become totally vulnerable, and just get crushed all over again?
So what does he do?
Well, what does Carlos do to manage this anxiety? He starts to pull away. He creates emotional distance. When she wants to have a deep, meaningful conversation about their future, he deflects with a joke or changes the subject.
He's building a wall.
He tells himself he's just being careful, that he is taking it slow and protecting his heart. But really, he's letting the biological fear of the unknown destroy a potentially beautiful connection.
Carlos is caught in a classic tragic paradox. Love and human connection are inherently, fundamentally uncertain.
Because you can't control another person.
Right. You can never get a legally binding guarantee that a relationship will last forever. You can never be 100% sure you won't eventually get hurt or lose the person.
True.
But Carlos's strategy, trying to protect himself from the uncertainty of being vulnerable, guarantees the exact negative outcome he is terrified of.
Wait, I want to trace the logic there.
Yeah.
How does protecting himself guarantee a breakup?
Because healthy relationships require vulnerability to survive. They require both people to step into the fog together. When Carlos pulls away and puts up a defensive wall, his partner starts to feel the chill.
She feels the distance.
She feels rejected. She feels confused because she doesn't understand why he's shutting down. She naturally starts to wonder if Carlos even cares about her at all.
So she starts to protect herself.
Yes. As a result, she starts to pull back. The distance between them grows wider and wider. Eventually, the connection starves to death and the relationship crumbles.
And when it ends, Carlos probably thinks, see, I knew it wouldn't last. I was right to protect myself.
Absolutely. But it didn't end because they weren't compatible. It ended because Carlos could not tolerate the uncertainty of vulnerability. He subconsciously manufactured the breakup to escape the suspense of waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Oh, wow. He chose the 100% chance of the shock over the 50% chance of the coin flip.
There it is.
He preferred the certainty of a breakup over the terrifying uncertainty of lasting, vulnerable love.
That is a brilliant connection to the earlier study. Yes, the suspense of trusting someone was too much for his amygdala, so he forced the negative outcome just to regain a sense of control.
Let's look at another area where this fear sabotages us, which might be the most physically dangerous one. Health and information avoidance.
This is a huge one in the medical field.
We see this all the time. Let's consider David. David is in his mid-40s, and for the last couple of months, he's been having these persistent headaches.
Okay.
They aren't blinding migraines, but they are always there, dull and throbbing, and they just won't go away.
Mm-hmm.
His wife is begging him to go to the doctor and get checked out. But David keeps making excuses.
Classic avoidance.
He says, I'm too busy at work right now, or it's just stress from the new project, or I'll go next month when things calm down. But his internal monologue, the real reason he won't go, is saying, What if they do an MRI and find a tumor? What if it's a disease they can't cure? I would rather just not know.
We call this the ostrich effect. This is an incredibly common and deeply dangerous psychological trap. David is confusing not knowing with being safe.
Because his head is in the sand.
Exactly. His brain has engaged in magical thinking. It has convinced him that if he remains completely ignorant about a potential illness, the illness somehow doesn't exist. On a subconscious level, he feels like the doctor's office is the place where the disease is actually created.
But reality exists completely independently of our awareness of it. If David has a medical issue, it is there whether he looks at the brain scan or not. Closing his eyes doesn't make the cliff disappear.
Right on the money. And by actively avoiding the information, he is throwing away the one thing he desperately wants: his power to control the situation.
Oh, that's such a good point.
The profound irony is that if he simply goes to the doctor, he gains certainty, which lowers his anxiety. The doctor might run tests and say, "David, it's just tension from clenching your jaw at night. Here's a mouth guard."
It would be incredible news and the fog is gone.
Or the doctor might say, "We found something concerning, but because we caught it early, we have a clear treatment plan." Either way, the fog lifts. You cannot fight an enemy you refuse to look at.
Wow.
For David, the background, chronic anxiety of walking around every single day, secretly wondering if he's dying, is actually far more exhausting to his nervous system than facing the reality and taking concrete action.
It's that illusion of control rearing its head again. He thinks by controlling the flow of information, he's controlling the actual biological outcome.
That's the magical thinking at work.
Let's pivot to another fascinating way this manifests. We've talked about people avoiding information, but what about people who drown in it? Let's talk about education and decision-making.
Analysis paralysis.
Yes, this one hits incredibly close to home for anyone who has ever stared at a streaming menu for 45 minutes, unable to pick a movie.
Oh, we've all been there.
Let's call her Yuki. Yuki is a bright university student, and she has reached the point where she has to declare her major. She is deeply passionate about both psychology and computer science.
A tough choice.
But instead of just picking one, she is absolutely frozen. She is terrified of making the wrong choice. She thinks, what if I pick psychology and I graduate and I can't find a high-paying job and I struggle financially? But what if I pick computer science for the money and I end up hating the coding life and I'm miserable for 40 years?
She's catastrophizing both sides.
Right. What if I ruin the entire trajectory of my life with this one single signature on a form? She worries so incessantly, researching average salaries and reading alumni reviews, that she actually misses the enrollment deadline and loses a whole semester of progress.
Yuki's paralysis comes from a very specific, very flawed mental model. She is trapped by the belief that life is a straight, narrow tightrope, and if you step 1 inch off the correct path, you fall into a bottomless abyss of failure.
She views it as life or death.
She views her decision as permanent and irreversible. But life is not a tightrope, it is a branching tree. There are very few decisions in life that cannot be reversed, adjusted, or pivoted from later.
And the psychological research highlights a really fascinating difference in personality types when it comes to this kind of decision making, right? The difference between maximizers and satisficers.
Yes, this is a wonderful and highly revealing concept from behavioral psychology. Yuki is acting as a classic maximizer.
What does that mean?
A maximizer is someone whose ultimate goal is to make the absolute objective best possible choice in any given scenario. Whether they are picking a university major, buying a car, or choosing a restaurant for dinner, they feel compelled to research every single option.
They compare every possible variable.
Right. They read every review and optimize for the perfect outcome. They cannot tolerate the uncertainty that there might be a slightly better option out there.
I am definitely guilty of this when buying electronics, I won't lie. But I'm going to go play devil's advocate and push back on this. What is the alternative? Satisficing.
Yes, satisficing.
Which, as I understand it, means finding an option that is just good enough and going with it. Doesn't that just mean settling? Shouldn't we all strive for the absolute best in our lives? Why wouldn't we want to maximize our outcomes?
It sounds incredibly logical that striving for the best would make us the happiest. But the data tells a completely different, almost tragic story about human psychology.
Okay.
Extensive research consistently shows that maximizers are measurably, significantly less happy than satisficers. They experience more regret, more daily stress, and lower life satisfaction.
Wait, really? Even if they end up picking a objectively better option?
Yes. And the reason is the lingering fog of uncertainty. Because the world is infinitely complex, a maximizer can never truly know if they made the perfect choice.
Because there's always another review they didn't read.
Exactly. So when they finally do make a decision, they spend the rest of their time agonizing over the what ifs. Did I pick the right major? What if the other major would have made me happier? Did I buy the right car? They are continually haunted by the ghosts of unchosen paths.
Wow, that sounds exhausting. And how does a satisficer handle it?
A satisficer approaches the uncertainty differently. They determine their core criteria up front. For example, Yuki might say, I want a major that is intellectually interesting to me and has decent job prospects.
Right. Okay. Establishing the baseline.
Once a satisficer finds an option that meets those specific criteria, they choose it and they stop looking. They close the browser tabs. They move forward.
They don't look back to see what they might have missed.
No, which means they can actually enjoy what they have chosen.
So the relentless pursuit of the perfect choice doesn't yield perfection. It just guarantees misery, endless second guessing, and in Yuki's case, literal inaction.
Absolutely.
Sometimes deciding that an option is good enough is the smartest, most psychologically protective move you can make.
Without a doubt.
Okay, so far we've talked about our personal individual choices, the
Right.
jobs we choose, the doctors we visit, the partners we date. But what happens when the uncertainty isn't a choice?
When it comes from the outside world.
Yes. What happens when it isn't coming from inside the house, but is forced upon us by the massive shifting gears of the outside world? Let's look at financial and global uncertainty.
This is where things get very heavy.
Take a man named Ahmed. Ahmed was just laid off because his company unexpectedly downsized due to a merger. It had nothing to do with his performance.
So it was completely out of his control.
Completely. He has a little bit of savings, enough for a few months, but he has no idea what the job market is like or how long the hunt will take. Every single morning, he wakes up with a sickening tight knot in his stomach. The fog is suffocating.
What if my savings run dry?
Right. What if I lose the house and have to uproot my family? What are my successful friends going to think of me? And his reaction to this overwhelming fog is to retreat. He feels deep, paralyzing shame.
That's a very common reaction to financial shock.
He stops calling his friends. He stops exercising. And he just sits on his couch, bathed in the blue light of his laptop, doom scrolling through job boards for 14 hours a day, feeling increasingly hopeless and bitter.
What Ahmed is experiencing is a very distinct, severe flavor of uncertainty because it strikes directly at the foundational base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Survival needs.
Yes. When we talk about picking a major or dealing with a quiet partner, those are emotional or self-actualization uncertainties. But financial uncertainty is about basic physical survival. Can I put a roof over my family's head? Can I buy groceries next week?
It's life or death to the brain.
Exactly. When our survival resources are threatened, the fear transcends mere emotional discomfort and touches our deepest, oldest evolutionary terrors.
And his reaction, the hiding away from the world and the obsessive nonstop checking of the job boards, is that a normal response to that level of threat?
It is incredibly common, and it's a desperate attempt to regulate his nervous system. The obsessive refreshing of the job websites is a frantic grab for the illusion of control.
He feels like he's doing something.
Ahmed thinks that if he just keeps checking, if he never looks away from the screen, he's working on the problem. He feels productive. But really, he is just feeding his anxiety a steady diet of cortisol.
Just bathing his brain in stress hormones.
And this ties perfectly into how we handle massive global uncertainty. Think about what the entire world experiences during a global pandemic or a massive economic recession, or watching international conflicts unfold on the news.
Oh man, the news.
When the uncertainty involves massive, chaotic forces that are entirely beyond our individual control, we are at risk of falling into a psychological state called learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness, that sounds incredibly bleak, like a state of complete surrender. The world is falling apart, the economy is rigged, everything is a mess, so why should I even bother updating my resume or trying to improve my life?
That is essentially it. It is the deep-seated, conditioned belief that your personal actions no longer have any meaningful impact on your outcomes.
You just give up.
You believe that no matter what you do, the fog will consume you. And when you combine learned helplessness with doom scrolling, the modern habit of endlessly consuming negative, catastrophic news on our phones, you create a perfect toxic storm of paralyzing anxiety.
So what is the antidote? How does someone like Ahmed or anyone listening right now who feels crushed by the weight of global news pull themselves out of that paralysis?
The antidote requires a radical shift in attention. You have to shrink your focus down to your specific, immediate circle of influence.
Circle of influence. What's that?
It's the things you actually have power over. You cannot control the global economy. You cannot control corporate merger policies. You cannot control geopolitical events. If you pour your mental energy into those things, you will drown.
Right, because you can't change them.
But Ahmed can control how many hours a day he dedicates to job hunting. He can set a boundary. I will look for jobs for 4 hours, and then I will close the laptop.
Reclaiming his agency.
Exactly. He can control reaching out to 3 specific former colleagues on Tuesday for a virtual coffee. He needs to take small, highly structured, incredibly mundane actions.
Action is the natural enemy of anxiety.
It truly is. Even imperfect, small action restores your sense of agency. It proves to your primitive brain that you are not helpless, that you still have hands on the steering wheel, even if the road is foggy.
Shrink the fog down to just the very next stepping stone. I love that. Now, I want to transition to a very specific type of micro uncertainty. And this highly relevant to a large portion of our audience today. Let's talk about the language learner's dilemma.
Oh, this is a fantastic example.
Because if you are listening to this right now as a way to practice your English comprehension, you are actively standing in the thick of this specific fog. Let's look at a learner named Lynn.
Okay, let's hear about Lynn.
Lynn has been studying English for 2 solid years. She is dedicated. She reads complex articles. She listens to deep dive audio shows like this one. And her passive comprehension is fantastic. She understands almost everything.
What?
But the second she has to open her mouth and actually speak to a native English speaker in a real world setting, she completely freezes.
the biological alarm goes off. Her mind goes entirely blank.
Yes. She is instantly paralyzed by a tidal wave of what ifs. What if I completely mess up the verb tense and sound foolish? What if my accent is too thick and they ask me to repeat myself and it's awkward? What if they secretly judge me or laugh at me?
So what does she do?
She just avoids speaking entirely. She stays safely tucked away in her comfort zone of reading and listening. And of course, the tragic result is that because she never speaks, her speaking skills never improve, which just confirms her insecurity and makes her feel even more inadequate.
Lynn is experiencing a highly documented psychological barrier that researchers call the fear of negative evaluation.
Fear of negative evaluation.
It is the intense, burning worry that other people are judging you poorly. And the cruel, almost poetic irony of language learning is that the entire process demands the very thing that triggers this profound fear.
Like my old swim coach used to say, you can't learn how to swim by sitting on the deck reading a book about the physics of water. Eventually, you have to get wet.
That's it, exactly. You can only improve your speaking by actually opening your mouth and producing the language in real time, which absolutely guarantees with 100% certainty that you will make mistakes.
You are definitely going to mess up.
You will stumble over your words. You will use the wrong preposition. You will blank on a vocabulary word you studied yesterday. The uncertainty of how the other person will react to your mistake is completely unavoidable.
Right.
But if you try to avoid the emotional discomfort of that uncertainty, you completely eliminate the possibility of progress.
I want to take a moment and speak directly to you, the listener, right now. If you are actively learning a language, if you're listening to us discuss these nuanced, complex psychological and biological concepts in a language that is not your native tongue, you are intentionally walking into the fog every single day.
It is an incredibly brave thing to do.
You are choosing the uncomfortable path. That is the literal definition of courage. I want you to reframe how you view that nervous feeling in your stomach. Discomfort is not a red flag signaling that you are failing. Discomfort is the geographic location of improvement.
I love that phrasing.
If you aren't a little bit uncomfortable, if you aren't occasionally stumbling, you simply aren't growing.
That is a wonderful, necessary reframe. Discomfort just means you are standing at the absolute frontier of your current abilities. It is the feeling of your brain building new neural pathways.
Okay, we have diagnosed the symptoms. We've looked at how this fear sabotages our jobs, our relationships, our health, our decisions, and our learning. Now, we need to look under the hood at the engine driving all of this.
The underlying mechanisms.
Yes, we need to examine the mind's traps. Because before we can deploy the toolkit to fix these behaviors, we have to identify the invisible internal mental loops that are generating the anxiety in the first place. And that starts with a psychological concept called IU.
Yes, intolerance of uncertainty, or IU for short. Clinical psychologists view IU almost like a psychological allergy.
An allergy.
Just like with pollen or peanuts, some people have a very mild, manageable allergy to the unknown, while other people have a severe, full-blown anaphylactic reaction to it.
So some people just genuinely can't handle it at all.
Right. People who score very high in IU possess an intense need for constant reassurance. They struggle to function without having all the facts laid out in front of them. They view any ambiguous, undefined situation as inherently threatening and malicious.
But someone with low IU, how do they walk through the world?
A person with low IU is psychologically flexible. They accept that ambiguity is just the water we all swim in. They are entirely comfortable making a decision with only, say, 70% of the information available, trusting their ability to adjust their course later if things change.
They don't need a guarantee.
Exactly. They might even view the unknown as an exciting puzzle rather than a threat.
It reminds me of how people travel. It's the difference between someone who needs a minute-by-minute, color-coded spreadsheet itinerary for a 7-day vacation versus someone who just buys a plane ticket, packs a bag, and says, I'll figure out where to sleep when I land.
That's a perfect illustration of high versus low IU. And the vital, optimistic piece of good news here is that intolerance of uncertainty is not a fixed, permanent genetic trait like your eye color or your height.
It's not permanent.
No, it is a learned cognitive pattern. It is a habit of mind. And because it is learned, it can absolutely be unlearned and changed through practice.
To begin unlearning it, we have to recognize and interrupt what usually happens next, which is the worry cycle. This cycle is a mental trap that is so incredibly easy to fall into and so hard to climb out of.
It really is.
Can you walk us through the actual anatomy of a worry spiral? What is happening in our heads?
Certainly. The worry cycle typically happens in 5 distinct, predictable stages. Stage 1 is the trigger. Something uncertain happens in your environment. Maybe your boss sends that vague, see me later email we talked about, or your partner gives you a weird look.
Okay, trigger happens. What's stage 2?
Stage 2 is the anxious thought. Your brain generates a specific hypothesis, like, I might get fired today, or they're angry with me.
The brain making predictions again.
Exactly. Then comes stage 3, which is the physiological anxiety. This is when the body responds to the thought. Your heart races, your stomach drops, your palms sweat. The amygdala has sounded the alarm.
And then comes stage 4, which is the actual act of worrying. And this is the truly tricky part, because worrying feels like we are doing hard work.
That is the trap. Stage 4 is where you start spinning endless scenarios. You start ruminating. If I get fired, I'll have to sell my car. And if I sell my car, how will I get to a new job? Maybe I should call my cousin who knows a guy at that other company, but what if they aren't hiring?
Snowballing out of control.
You are running dozens of hypothetical, catastrophic simulations in your mind. And this leads to stage 5, which is temporary relief.
Wait, I need you to explain that. How on earth does spinning worst-case scenarios provide relief? Worrying feels awful.
It feels awful emotionally, but cognitively, it creates the illusion of productivity. When you worry, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the planning part of your brain.
Oh, I see.
For a brief, fleeting moment, your brain says, look at us. We are problem solving. We are preparing for the attack. We are doing something about the threat.
But you weren't actually doing anything.
Right, because you haven't actually solved the underlying uncertainty. The meeting with your boss still hasn't happened yet. That feeling of relief vanishes almost instantly. And you are dumped right back into stage 3, anxiety, and the loop starts all over again.
I always compare the worry cycle to sitting in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do. It occupies your time. It takes a lot of energy to keep it moving, but it doesn't actually get you anywhere. You just rock back and forth furiously in the exact same spot.
That is an excellent, very accurate analogy. To break the cycle, we have to draw a hard, impenetrable line between worrying and problem solving.
So what's the difference?
Problem solving involves taking concrete, actionable steps in the real world. Updating your resume is problem solving. Worrying is just sitting in a dark room watching horror movies that your own mind directed.
And those mental horror movies are almost always directed by what psychologists call cognitive distortions.
Yes, the faulty lenses.
These are the mental traps that take a spark of uncertainty and turn it into a raging forest fire of anxiety. Let's look closely at some of the most common ones, because recognizing them is the first step to disarming them. The first one is catastrophizing.
Catastrophizing. This is when your brain bypasses all logical moderate outcomes and jumps straight to the absolute apocalyptic worst case scenario.
0 to 100.
It's the student who thinks, if I fail this one single math quiz, I will fail the class, I will never get into a good university, I will be totally unemployable, and my entire life will be a complete and utter failure.
Going from 0 to the apocalypse in 3 seconds flat. And the brain does this because preparing for the apocalypse feels safer than being surprised by a minor setback. Okay, the next distortion is fortune telling.
This is the arrogant assumption that you possess a crystal ball and know exactly how the complex future will unfold. And naturally, because of the negativity bias, the future you predict is always bad.
Like, I know this is going to be terrible.
Exactly. I just know if I go to this networking party, I'm going to spill a drink, say something incredibly awkward, and everyone in the room will think I'm an idiot. You treat an assumption as an absolute predetermined fact,
which guarantees you'll either have a terrible time or you just won't go to the party at all. Next is black and white thinking.
This is the brain refusing to see any middle ground or nuance. There are only two possible outcomes in the universe: complete, shining, flawless success, or absolute humiliating failure.
No in between.
If I don't get the specific promotion by the time I'm 30, my entire career is a joke. It completely ignores the vast, messy, complicated gray area where 99% of actual human life happens.
Why does the brain do that?
Because seeing nuance takes cognitive energy. Sorting things into binary good or bad categories is much faster for a stressed brain.
Yeah, that makes total sense from an energy conservation standpoint. The next one is a huge driver of social anxiety. Mind reading.
Yes, this is the assumption that you know exactly what other people are thinking about you, despite having absolutely zero concrete evidence.
Like thinking someone hates your outfit just because they glanced at you.
Right. I stumbled over a word during my presentation. I can tell by the way my coworker looked down that everyone in the room thinks I'm totally incompetent. You project your own insecurities onto the blank canvas of other people's minds.
And finally, a very tricky one: emotional reasoning.
This distortion is the belief that because you feel a certain way, it must be an objective fact in the real world. It equates an internal, subjective emotion with an external reality.
Can you give an example?
For example, I feel absolutely terrified about getting on this airplane. Therefore, this airplane must be in actual physical danger of crashing. It is the failure to recognize that feelings are just biological responses, not necessarily accurate barometers of the truth.
Okay, we've laid the entire problem out on the table. We've done the deep diagnosis. We understand our ancient prediction-obsessed brains, the negativity bias, the status quo trap, the illusion of the worry cycle, and the cognitive distortions. Now we reach the most important part of this deep dive. The toolkit.
Time to fix it.
Yes, it is time to deliver the cure. How do we actually rewire this ancient machinery? How do we build evidence-based strategies for dealing with the heavy fog of the unknown?
The very first step, the foundational strategy, requires shifting your ultimate goal. You have to accept that you cannot eliminate uncertainty from your life.
It's just not possible.
Trying to build a perfectly predictable life is a fool's errand. It is impossible. So the goal is not elimination. The goal is building tolerance. And you build psychological tolerance through exposure therapy in your daily life.
Like taking microdoses of the unknown to build up your immunity.
Precisely. I mean, absolutely. You build the uncertainty muscle by intentionally seeking out tiny, completely harmless, low-stakes uncertainties.
Like what?
Drive a totally new route to work without using your GPS. Go to a restaurant you've never been to, close the menu, and ask the waiter to just bring you their favorite dish without telling you what it is.
Oh, that sounds fun, actually.
Strike up a conversation with a stranger in line for coffee. Cook a meal without rigidly measuring the ingredients or following the recipe. These tiny intentional acts of entering the fog teach your nervous system a profound lesson.
That you survive it.
That you can experience the unknown and you can survive it without the world ending.
I love that. But what about when the stakes are higher? What about when the big, terrifying worries hit? That leads us to the CBT approach, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is essentially about challenging your thoughts.
When you catch yourself spinning in that worry cycle, you have to stop being a passive victim of your brain and become a rigorous defense lawyer in the courtroom of your own mind. You have to put your anxious thoughts on trial.
How does that work in practice?
Let's say the thought is, I am going to completely bomb this job interview tomorrow and embarrass myself. You don't just accept that thought as truth, you cross-examine it.
Okay.
First, ask for the hard evidence supporting the thought. Well, maybe you are a bit nervous and maybe you haven't prepared for every single possible question, okay? Then you demand the evidence against the thought.
The counter evidence.
Right. Well, I have a solid, well-written resume. I have 5 years of relevant experience in this field. I have navigated difficult interviews successfully in the past.
And then you ask the grounding question. What is the most realistic outcome? Not the catastrophic disaster and not the perfect fantasy, but the realistic middle ground.
Correct. The realistic outcome is probably, I might stumble on 1 or 2 difficult questions. My voice might shake a little at the beginning, but overall, I will present myself reasonably well and they will see my competence.
And if they don't?
Then you ask yourself the ultimate golden question of resilience. Even if the worst case scenario happens, can I cope with it? Even if you completely bomb the interview, spill coffee on the hiring manager, and don't get the job, you will survive.
You'll just apply somewhere else.
You'll be disappointed, it will sting, but you will wake up the next day and you will apply to other jobs. You are capable of handling the fallout.
That is incredibly empowering. Another powerful tool in the kit is the 2 columns exercise. This is a brilliant way to force focus and clarity when you are drowning in a chaotic situation.
It's very practical.
You literally sit down with a physical piece of paper and a pen. You draw a bold line right down the middle of the page. At the top of the left column, you write, things I can control. At the top of the right column, you write, things I cannot control.
It's an incredibly clarifying, almost ruthless exercise. If you're waiting to hear back about that job you interviewed for, your left column, what you control, includes my preparation, how I dressed, the thank you email I send afterward, and my decision to keep applying to other jobs while I wait.
And the right column.
The right column, what you cannot control, includes the hiring manager's mood that day, the internal budget constraints of the company, whether the CEO decides on a hiring freeze, and the qualifications of the other candidates.
And the absolute unbreakable rule of this exercise is you are only allowed to pour your limited time and mental energy into the left column. The right column is strictly off limits.
Because worrying about the right column changes mathematically nothing about the outcome. It just drains your battery.
Exactly. Letting go of that right column is hard. It causes emotional friction because it means surrendering the illusion of control. But it is incredibly liberating, which ties directly into another vital strategy, mindfulness.
Mindfulness is essential.
I know it's become a buzzword, but clinically, mindfulness is the ultimate weapon against uncertainty because of one simple, undeniable fact. Anxiety about the unknown only exists in the future. It lives in tomorrow, or next week, or next year.
Anxiety never, ever exists in the physical breath of the present moment.
I have to challenge this, though, on behalf of the skeptics. Because mindfulness always sounds so incredibly peaceful and simple on paper. Just breathe.
It does sound simple.
But when your ancient primitive brain genuinely believes a lion is actively attacking you, how do you actually convince it to just sit still, focus on a cup of tea, and breathe? It feels like telling someone in a burning building to enjoy the warmth of the fire.
It feels impossible at first, which is exactly why it is called a mindfulness practice, not a mindfulness perfect. You are training the nervous system.
Okay, training it how?
When you intentionally shift your focus to the raw sensory input of the present moment, say, feeling the physical warmth of the tea mug in your hands, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, feeling the rhythm of your chest rising and falling, you are sending a biological chemical signal down the vagus nerve to your brain.
Talking directly to the hardware.
You are actively communicating with the amygdala. You're saying, look around right now in this exact physical second. In this room, we are okay. The catastrophe has not happened. There is no lion. You ground yourself in undeniable physical reality.
And that actually rewires the brain.
Peer-reviewed research shows that actively practicing gratitude, deeply focusing on the good things that are concretely present right now, literally reduces the activation and the physical size of the amygdala over time.
Which brings us to the concept of anchors and support. When the big picture of your life is totally foggy, like when you are going through a divorce or a major career change or an illness, you desperately need small, tangible things you can absolutely count on. You need daily, reliable routines.
We call these psychological anchors. If you don't know where you will be living in 6 months, or if you don't know if you'll have a job next month, that is a massive destabilizing uncertainty.
So what do you do?
You build anchors. You ensure that every single morning at 7 a.m. without fail, you make a specific cup of coffee. You can ensure that you write in a journal for 10 minutes. You can ensure that you go for a 15-minute walk around the block.
Giving yourself something certain.
That predictable structure acts as a lifeline. It calms the nervous system by providing a solid foundation of certainty amidst the chaos.
And part of that foundational support system has to involve other human beings.
Yeah.
The sheer power of just vocalizing your fear to a trusted friend, looking them in the eye and saying, I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed, I have no idea what's going to happen. It is profound.
It's like letting the steam out of a high pressure cooker.
It shrinks the fear immediately just by bringing it out of the dark echo chamber of your mind and into the light.
Shared uncertainty is infinitely easier for the human primate to bear than solitary uncertainty. We are social creatures. Our nervous systems regulate each other.
The final tool in the kit is a very simple but incredibly effective linguistic trick. It involves catching your internal monologue and actively replacing the phrase, what if, with the phrase, what is.
A very powerful shift.
Because what if is infinite and it is exhausting. What if I fail? What if the economy tanks? What if I never find love? What if aliens land? You can play the what if game until you collapse.
But what is forcefully brings you back to the solid ground of the present. Instead of spiraling into what if I never become fluent in English and I always sound foolish, you forcefully interrupt that thought and say, what is true right now?
Right now, I am trying.
Right now, I am listening to a deep dive in English. I am actively learning. I am putting in the effort. Reality, no matter how difficult, is almost always more manageable than the catastrophic, boundless fantasies our anxious minds invent.
Okay, we are entering the final and I think most exciting phase of our deep dive. We've spent a lot of time talking about defense. We've talked about how to protect ourselves, how to manage the crushing anxiety, how to calm the nervous system, and how to spot mental traps.
We've built the armor.
But now I want to completely flip the script. I want to switch to offense. How do we not just survive the fog, but actually learn to embrace it?
To do that, we need a complete paradigm shift. We have spent this entire conversation talking about uncertainty as a threat, as a shadow, as a hiding place for danger and failure.
That's how it usually feels.
But there is a profound, beautiful truth that we must acknowledge if we want to live fully. Uncertainty is also the birthplace of absolutely everything wonderful in your life.
I want everyone listening to just let that sink in for a second. Uncertainty is the birthplace of everything wonderful.
Think about it deeply. Every single good thing you have in your life right now, your absolute best friend, your favorite hobby that brings you peace, your current career, the skills you are most proud of, there was a time in your past before you had them.
Right. Before you knew they existed.
And in that time, it was completely 100% uncertain whether you ever would. Before you met your partner, your romantic future was a fog. Before you applied for that job you love, the outcome was uncertain.
Wow, yeah.
The fog isn't just a cloak for predators and failure. It is the one and only door that leads to unexpected joy, to adventure, to deep love, and to life-changing experiences.
If you always stubbornly stay on the sunlit left path, the one where you can see every single stone and tree root, you will only ever get exactly what you already know. You will never be surprised. You will never discover anything new. The fog on the right path is where the magic happens.
When you only view uncertainty through the lens of threat, you close yourself off from the vastness of possibility. If you can train your mind to hold two seemingly opposing ideas in your head at the exact same time, yes, something could go wrong. And yes, something could go beautifully, unexpectedly right. You replace paralyzing fear with vibrant curiosity.
I love looking to literature and history for wisdom on this, because the greatest thinkers have always grappled with the unknown. There are a few perspectives that I think capture this paradigm shift perfectly. A brilliant author, Ursula K. Le Guin, once wrote that the only thing that makes human life actually possible and bearable is permanent, intolerable uncertainty, not knowing what comes next. Because absolute predictability is just another word for stagnation. It's boring.
Indeed. A completely predictable life is a machine's life, not a human's. And a renowned novelist, Margaret Drabble, put it wonderfully when she said, "When nothing is sure, everything is possible."
That is the ultimate empowering reframe. An unwritten future doesn't mean you are doomed. It means you hold the pen.
And a famous mathematician, John Allen Palos, noted a profound, somewhat humorous paradox about the human condition. He said that uncertainty is the only true certainty there is, and knowing how to live comfortably with insecurity is the only real security you will ever find.
It's not the uncertainty itself that hurts us. It's our desperate, exhausted resistance to it.
If you can finally surrender to the fact that the fog is a permanent fixture of the human landscape, you suddenly find yourself walking through it with a much lighter step. You stop fighting the weather and learn to navigate in it.
So to bring this all home, and especially for those of you who are listening to this as a way to practice and immerse yourself in English, we want to leave you with a mental walkthrough. Because passive listening is a great start, but active engagement is where the neurological rewiring actually happens.
Echolocation is key.
Before we sign off, I want you to grab a mental pen, or a real one if you have it. I invite you to think through these 5 prompts. If you want to write a short paragraph in English for each of them, even better. Don't stress about perfect grammar or finding the right vocabulary word. Just focus on exploring your own thoughts in new language.
The first prompt.
First, think back to a specific time in your past when you felt deeply, uncomfortably uncertain about something big. What was the situation, and what were the physical and emotional feelings you experienced in your body?
Second, looking back at that exact same situation from where you were standing now, how did it actually turn out? Was the final real-world outcome really as apocalyptic and terrible as your brain feared it would be?
Third, identify one specific area of your life right now where you feel the fog rolling in. What is one small, manageable, concrete step you can take today to focus strictly on the left column, the things you can control?
Fourth, think about how your specific journey of learning English has involved uncertainty. What specific fears have you faced? Perhaps the fear of speaking out loud or the fear of negative evaluation, and how are you actively navigating them?
And finally, perhaps the most powerful mental exercise. I want you to imagine writing a short letter to your future self. Remind yourself of the tools we discussed today. Remind yourself how you want to handle the unknown the very next time the heavy fog rolls in.
Writing it down really cements the ideas.
Using English as a tool for profound personal growth and self-reflection, honestly, that's the most beautiful and effective way to use a language. So let's summarize the massive, deep journey we've taken together today.
We started by looking deep into our ancient biology, understanding that our fear is not a weakness, but a biological reaction to a lack of prediction.
We recognized how this survival glitch wears different masks in the modern world, secretly sabotaging our careers through the status quo bias, undermining our relationships through a fear of vulnerability, and halting our learning through a fear of external judgment.
We looked at how the worry cycle traps us in the exhausting illusion of productivity, and how cognitive distortions like catastrophizing and mind reading throw gasoline on the fire of our anxiety.
And then we built a practical toolkit, exposing ourselves to microdoses of uncertainty, acting as a lawyer to challenge our anxious thoughts, focusing strictly on our circle of control, creating daily anchoring routines, and ultimately shifting our entire mindset to see the fog not as a hiding place for monsters, but as the birthplace of possibility.
Before we go, I want to introduce one final, entirely new concept to leave you pondering. It's a concept called anti-fragility.
Anti-fragility.
We often think the opposite of fragile is robust or resilient. A fragile glass drops and breaks. A robust plastic cup drops and stays exactly the same. But anti-fragility is something else entirely. It describes systems that actually gain from disorder, chaos, and uncertainty.
Oh, that's interesting.
Think of a candle versus a forest fire. Wind extinguishes a fragile candle, but wind fuels the fire. The uncertainty of the wind makes the fire stronger.
Wow.
We began this hour with that vivid image of standing at the crossroads, terrified of the thick fog on the right path because we assumed it was hiding a cliff. But ask yourself, how can you become the fire? What if the fog on that right path isn't hiding a cliff at all? What if it's hiding a sturdy, beautiful bridge that will carry you to a life you can't even begin to imagine yet?
You will never, ever know if you don't take that first terrifying, wonderful step. Stepping into the fog, choosing to make mistakes, and continuing to learn and grow despite the discomfort is the ultimate act of human bravery. It is proof that you are stronger than the unknown. Thank you so much for walking into the fog with us today. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.